Hey, you're in the vault at Rock 31, downtown Billings, Montana. I'm Gavin Erickson. This is my brother Gabe.
And you are joining us on our third episode of the Revenant podcast. We have an amazing guest today. Her name is Tabitha Bonner. She's a nonprofit executive in Northern Idaho doing some cool stuff, and she's a big time runner. So let's get it going. She's the executive director for a nonprofit up in Northern Idaho called the Northern Idaho Centennial Trail Foundation. She's active in the running community, van life. She's an outdoor lover and traveler. Let's bring her into the show. Tabitha, welcome.
Thanks, guys. I'm super excited. Like I said, I have a podcast, and it's so fun to be on the other side and not have to worry about the questions, and I get fun.
Speaking of that, what's a good first question for you? I'm just kidding. Tell us your story.
Well, I'm a North Idaho girl, born and raised, moved away to Montana. So that's where my Montana, I guess part of my roots come from. I went to school at Rocky Mountain College in Billings, Montana, and loved and immersed myself into the Montana culture. I would say that's my second home. I moved away and went to, had a job in Idaho, and then I ended up going back for another job. All nonprofit work. And so Montana always just calls me back. So don't be surprised if I ever move back again.
Well, we would gladly take you.
Yeah. So my background is nonprofit work mostly. I love them. It got me sucked in with Boys and Girls Club. Then I worked for it's called the Children's Village, which was children that were homeless. And so I helped raise money, fundraising for that. And then I found myself at the North Idaho Centennial Trail Foundation, which I raise money for a trail system here in North Idaho. I have the best job. I'm really lucky to have the job I do. So I get a fundraise to make sure that North Idaho has their most amazing trail systems, which is fantastic.
Do you get to go out on the trails?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm never in the office, especially in the summer. I'm like, oh, this is a good day to be out on the trail. So we've got 23 miles of trail. So it's from Higgins Point, if you're Coeur d'Alene, it's like kind of the end of the lake. As you're coming from Montana, you're coming in, there's the trail that kind of starts in that area, and then it goes all the way to the Washington border.
Wow.
And then driving out towards Washington, you'll see this beautiful bridge. It says North Idaho Centennial Trail.
Crazy.
Yeah.
And how long have you been there?
I started 2019. So the beginning of 2019 is when I first started here. And I absolutely love it. And I also advocate. So one of our, I guess, kind of mission is that we also advocate for other trail systems and walkability, bikeability in the community. So it's kind of like, even if there's another trail system, we try to figure out how to connect, support the cities, support that we have more trails and ways that people can move their bodies.
Which is super important.
Very.
What has it been about the nonprofit life that's just got you there?
It's hard to I think Boys and Girls Club, that was just like working with youth. I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and then I realized I didn't want to be in a classroom. And so the flexibility I got to, let's go make a field trip up. Let's go do this. Let's go learn outside of four walls. And then I realized that raising money for these organizations or these programs was really beneficial. Like these staff that were working with the kids, it was great, but if you don't have the funding for it, you can't do all these great things. So then I was like, I want to raise the money. And I've always been a kind of an event planner. And so it's been fun to raise the funds. And I think that's what it is you're really helping on a bigger scale, and you're helping. I have youth come back to me and tell me how much one trip we took or one thing that we did, they were like, that made an impact and you had no idea. So I think maybe that's it, is just the impact you make later on.
That's awesome.
Speaking of event planning, how long you're a runner, your Instagram handle is literally Tabitha Runs.
Yeah.
So first,
people are like, you must run all the time. Also I run business, I run fundraisers, I run everything, not also just my legs. So
I love that. It's like a
Tabitha runs the world.
Exactly. Vote mayor 2026.
That's like what a quadruple entendre, you could say.
Yep.
All the meetings. So Eminem would be proud. But
yeah, he would.
How did you get into the outdoors? Has that always been part of your lifestyle? running specifically? Do you prefer trail running? Just give us all the things.
Well, I think, yeah, I have to give it to my parents. Like, growing up, I grew up in the 90s, and growing up in a small town, we grew up in a little town outside of Coeur d'Alene. A lot of both parents worked. You don't get to go to Disneyland and all these great things. So our parents made experiences, and my family was all about the outdoors. So I remember my first big hike to Crystal Lake, and I remember all of these things. And I really think that's where I got in love with the outdoors. And now my husband and I own a van, and we travel around as much as possible. We ski, we hike. I can't get him to run, but I fell in love with running in about 2010. I did my first half marathon, and it was hard. It sucked. And then I realized you can like train for these a little bit harder, and you so then I got into the marathon running, which is not for everybody. And then I did my first one in Duluth, Minnesota. Really cool. Grandma marathon. Yep, Grandma's. If you ever can do Grandma's, it was a cool atmosphere, running next to Lake Superior the whole time. And then my second one was actually in Chicago. I got into the Chicago by the lottery, and I qualified for Boston with that one. And I trained my butt off for it. And my watch stopped working. So I thought I was done for. I was like, no PRs, no great. And I crossed the finish line. I'm like, holy crap, I qualified for Boston. And so from there on, it was kind of like, this is really some cool things. And then running on pavement's hard. It's hard on your joints, your knees. And I've like really just started to really fall in love with the trail running. I think it's less about time and more about connecting to, your surroundings. And so then I did the Rut 50K in Bozeman back in 2018. That changed my outlook on trail running completely. If anyone's listening, if you've done it, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. When you go up to Lone Peak and you're just like, I can be done right now, and you still have like a long time to go. But I think it's just, connecting with the outdoors, which I love the trail running. I think I do that more than any other running. Is we have a little hill around there. It's called Tubbs Hill. I can do a couple loops on that in the morning, and it's perfect.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And the run did you start the run that you just wrapped up?
So we did the Coeur d'Alene Marathon. So that is actually 45 years old.
Okay, so I thought you had your own separate thing. Okay, go on.
So it's been a fundraiser for the Centennial Trail forever. Before the trail has only been around for 33 years. That's when it was founded. It was back in 1990. But they started the Coeur d'Alene Marathon, and it became the fundraiser for the Centennial Trail. So yeah, it's about 45 years old, and it's a phenomenal. If you ever want to run it, come let me know. I'll hook you up. But it's one of the most beautiful, I guess, marathons you could run next to Lake Coeur d'Alene and the Spokane River. I mean, it's wonderful. We just wrapped that up. It's Memorial Day weekend every year. And the thought of that is that we can get a lot of out of towners to come in, because they get that extra day of travel that you don't get, because most marathons are on Sundays, or most big races are on Sundays. And then you have to either leave right after the race, or you have to take that Monday off. And with Memorial Day weekend, you get that Monday off. And so you can use it as a travel day or experience the area. So we had about 2,300 runners. It was a great day. Beautiful weather. It was like chilly in the morning, kind of 60s, never bright sunny. So it was like a runner's dream. It was a very successful race this year.
That's awesome. And for a good cause.
Great cause. Yeah. All the money goes back to maintaining. We're about to expand the Centennial Trail up towards more North Idaho, Rathdrum. And so Prairie Trail, we're about to expand that. So all of these funding kind of helps that, or reseal coating the trail, because a lot goes into it.
These are kind of gems across the country. Like Coeur d'Alene is a gem, right? I knew nothing about this place. And then Gabe and I found out we had family over on the West Coast in Oregon, in the Vancouver, Washington area. And so we drove through Coeur d'Alene, and we're like, what is this place?
It's magic.
Beautiful. Yeah, it is magic. So
we had to stop at the paddleboards even, because the lake looked so appealing. We're like, we must stop.
Yep. I have 2 paddleboards. So if you come back through, let me know. You can borrow them anytime, because it's one of my favorite things to do. Is just, especially if like early summer, late summer, when there's not as many boats, and you can just get on there, it's just glass. Oh, nothing better.
I feel like that's what, like, people miss out on that. You were talking about connection earlier. I want to go back to that in a little bit, but people miss out on that when they just drive through places, right?
Yep.
Or when they're just Googling places. And
Mhm.
you miss out on all the work that's being done on the back end to conserve those places for people to continue to enjoy throughout the years, and trail systems and all that gets just lost in just
100%.
people's daily lives. Can you talk about like why that's so important to you outside of just people to enjoy it?
Well, yeah, I mean, the economic impact it has on our community. We just did a huge study on it. We did it in 2018, and then we just renewed it and went kind of back through. I mean, we doubled our numbers of people using the Centennial Trail, doubled it. So in
Wow.
2018, it was 420,000 people use the Centennial Trail. We did it just updated. It's about 800,000 people use the Centennial
Crazy.
Trail just in North Idaho. And then I don't know if you've ever heard of the Great American Trail, and it's actually a trail it's designed to actually be a walkability, bikeability trail that goes from coast to coast.
Dang.
And actually a little section of our trail is part of that. I think the whole state of Washington is finished, so you can literally go on a trail and not have to be on like major roads or anything. So
It's wild.
yeah, check it in, check out. It's really, really cool. But I think that's kind of the piece, like you said, connecting, is that you can buy pavement, trails, dirt, whatever, that we can connect all of the coolest people that love the outdoors, that want to move their
Yeah.
bodies. And I think that, like you said, is that community connecting trails, connecting people. And I always tell people, this is what, like, you can live in Post Falls, if you know the area, Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, you could bike to work and you don't have to ride you don't have to drive, you don't have to do any of these things. And you can meet the neatest people walking their dogs. It always sounds pretty and wonderful. There's also the negativity of the other things that come with it too. But I think for the most part, it connects our community. I think it's just the heart of North Idaho is the Centennial Trail.
Yeah. I think, social media, right? It's kind of like antisocial though, right? That's what it kind of breeds, antisocial. But what you're talking about is like getting into the outdoors and being social. And you're the second person we've talked to that talked about like being active and having full conversations with random strangers. And that's such a missed thing in today's age. People just connecting with other people that they don't know at all, but they both own dogs, right?
Yep.
Yeah. What is like do you have an instance you can think of that you were like, this is why I do this? That you
Yeah,
just like met somebody?
I think, well, like a good example is like our marathon last week. Having our volunteers out there and connecting with each other, the racers, how grateful they are for these like volunteers that just want to help out, and they love the outdoors, they love running. Unfortunately, we had one of the worst things happen. We had someone collapse on the Centennial Trail during the marathon and later pass at the hospital during mile 23. But what happened when he collapsed, we had a local nurse that was running behind him that started working chest compressions. We had a retired physician. We had a community stop. They didn't care about their time. They didn't care about anything, but they cared about this person's health. And they made sure that they did everything they can to get that ambulance there as quickly as possible and to try to keep him alive as whatever they could do. And so I think we talked to his mother, and she had nothing but amazing things, even though she's going through what she did, because he was only 23. And it really showed, I think, the North Idaho community of what everyone, really cares about is each other and not anything else.
And that's so important because our nonprofit helps veterans transition, right?
Mhm.
And their families. And that's like the biggest thing when you leave service is that loss of community. And I think a lot of people leave the service and they just enter a civilian community that they don't know where to jump in. They don't know who to be around and to include into their circle. But what you're talking about is so powerful because you're around other people that doesn't matter what your background is, how much money you make, if what the color of your skin is, race, religion, you're all into the same thing, and it's healthy and it's active, and
Oh,
it doesn't, none of that stuff matters.
Exactly. And I looked at what you guys are doing, which I think is amazing, because I really feel like outdoors is healing. It's community. It's pretty magical. There's another guy here locally that has started a sailing program, kind of with a similar thing, whether you can't afford to go sailing, because sailing's expensive, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Let's be creative. If you're a veteran that does not have the means to do that, if you're, kids with learning disabilities, he wants to get people sailing as much as possible. And it is the same thing. Like, he tells me the stories of like how magical he's had these interactions with people being outdoors, doing something together. and, and you make lifelong friends out of that. You're like, oh, we're all into the same thing. We all want to learn. We all want to be outdoors. We all want to run, whatever it is. I agree with you 100%. It's pretty amazing what I think the outdoors can do.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what's so special about trails. Like the moment I go from running on sidewalks and things like that to a trail setting, it's just like you're seeing the place you've lived for however long in a completely new way. And it's much more nature and it seems more focused. It seems more serene, and it just might be a couple blocks away from where I was run,
Exactly.
So I think trails, to me, like the accessibility thing, it's kind of like giving people back what is ours, which is access to nature.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And then like you go out in your same trails or your runs or walks or whatever, and you see that same lady, and you're like, by the end of the summer, you're like made friends with her. You're like, oh, didn't see you yesterday. Is everything okay? I think there's just a lot of cool stuff about it.
Yeah. I was on a podcast actually last night, and it was a leadership podcast, and we were talking about, being the difference of being like having interactions with other people, and then the difference of like being self-aware and having interactions with yourself. And you were talking about the rut and how challenging that was. Can you talk about like somebody who maybe has never done a marathon before and is scared of feeling that like broken, I can't do it, want to quit feeling? How did that type of thing help you connect with yourself?
Oh, that was, like I said, I even talked to people that were Ironman athletes that have done both. And they said the rut was harder. And I was like, really? Well, that makes sense, because you have a lot of time by yourself, even though you're running past people or people running past you. I'll never forget running up Lone Peak, like, and you're falling down the rocks, because it's not a run. It's your mountaineering. You're not even hiking. It's ridiculous. And so you get to the top, and I looked at this lady. I'll never forget. I looked at her. I go, I think I'm done. I don't have anything to prove. I don't need to tell him I'm done. And she looked me straight in the eye. She goes, you got yourself up here and you're going to finish this. And I was like, son of a gun. So and she's like, load up on as much nutrition, because the next aid station's a long ways away. And I was like, that once she just looked at me, and I'm like, you're right. I'm way tougher than this. I can do this. If nothing else, I can power walk through it. I don't need to run. But that was the hardest part, was like right there, and then going down like shale rock. And you talk to yourself about quitting. So I'm a runner, and I will push myself. Unfortunately, I'll push myself to like passing out. But that was the first time I wanted to quit any kind of race or anything I've ever done. I mean,
Wow.
I played college basketball. I've done the sports, but that was hard. That was really hard. But when I'll never forget, because the last 4 miles are kind of like easy. It's like running through a meadow, and it's beautiful and wonderful. I hit that, and I was like, where has this been all day? Like, where has it been? And will never forget the finish. Like, I finished, and I talked to my friends that are trail athletes, that are ultra marathoners all the time, that have never finished. And so that's when I was like, put it in perspective. I was like, there's amazing athletes out there that did not finish this. And so it was just one of those things. That lady, I'll never forget. If I saw her, I would know who she was, but she looked at me, she said, you got yourself up here. You're going to finish this. And I was like, oh, the only time I'm up there is if you're skiing.
For context, how many like half marathons, like what's your kind of like?
I've actually, everyone says that, and I'm like, I don't really think I've ever counted. I've done quite a few halves, and a lot of like 5Ks and 10Ks, but my marathon count is 7. And then the rut was my only like major ultra. I've done a lot of trail races that are kind of like half marathons or 5Ks or 10Ks or 10 milers. But the rut was like the hardest one. And it crushed me for a while. So
are you going to come and do our ultra?
I can't, because that's a weekend I'm have something planned. What weekend is it getting out now that I'm?
I think it's August
12th.
And it's a Saturday. So
we have a virtual component.
Nice. But I also
virtual.
Go ahead. That is true.
Yeah.
And you guys
you could put 30 miles in and call it like virtual finisher for the Revenant. If you want to do 30 miles. Look
at you guys. Good salesman. Your race is going to be successful.
What were you going to say though?
I don't remember. I think that weekend I have something, because I even looked at it, because when Brenda, our friend that like connected us, Brenda was like, Tab, I know how much you love this kind of stuff. You should come see me and come run this. And I can't remember what it is. We have something. Well, the next weekend is my huge brew fest that I put on. It's another fundraiser I put on for the Centennial Trail. So it's kind of my last planning week.
And you need to be able to walk for that. So
yeah, I need to like be very busy, and but you guys should come over if you get bored.
That's what I was gonna say. Let's trade events. You come and do a 32 miler, and we'll come and drink beer.
seems fair.
About this, that does not work out. Math ain't mathing right now.
I'll say that's just math.
That's just that's math. What did that do? Running the rut, finishing, and then because I've been through challenging things myself, and I know like when you get out of it on the backside, you kind of replay that self-talk you had during. And a lot of times there's like shame that goes along with it. A lot of times there's like, yeah. I told that voice to F off, right? Like
exactly. Or you also were like, I can't believe I almost gave up.
Right.
Like I can't believe I almost, because there's a guy, the reason, and I look over at this guy, he was probably a little bit older than me, and he looks and he's just puking. And I'm like, yeah, why do I need to do that? Like I'm watching him and I can't, no energy. But yeah, like at points you're just like, at the end, you're like, I almost gave up, and I finished it. I did it. Like I did great. And then like, also, I don't know how many races or challenges like you guys have done, but at the end, I'm like, maybe I should sign up for another thing. Like I'm very
looking
addicted
for that next challenge.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, what else can I do?
That type of stuff that builds your character, right? And I feel like like today, that's not happening a lot with the younger generations, where they're presented with an opportunity that just looks like a run, but really it's an opportunity to just suffer and then come out the backside of that suffering successful. And that's such a metaphor for life. Like life isn't just, you're not just like riding unicorns through rainbows and clouds in life. Like there are points in life where you suffer, and it's how you react to those and talk yourself and work yourself through those things that builds your character. So do you feel like throughout your time of like just constantly presenting yourself with challenges that you have become a different person than you were before any of that?
Oh yeah, which is good and bad. Like there's great times where you're like, oh, that's like people be like, gosh, that sounds like a hard task. And I was like, meh. Like when I run these big events and stuff, I'm like, meh, this is nothing. Like, nope. But then there's other times I'm like, I look at people, I'm like, suck it up, come on. And I'm like, oh, not everybody has like, you're like I was with my friends this weekend in Glacier, and we were hiking, having a good time in Glacier. Their kids were there. And I said something to one of the kids, and I'm like, not everybody wins games. And she's like,
we all win games.
And I was like, no, not all of them win. They all have to lose. I will beat these kids. I'll race them on the bike.
I will beat these kids.
Gotta learn, kids. Gotta learn.
I saw videos, kind of off topic, but related to what you're talking about, where a guy said he tells his kids that the moment you leave this house, no one cares about you. Just to set proper expectations, right?
It is. I mean, like everyone gets these like medals and trophies. I'm like, you apply for that job, not everyone's going to get that. You don't get everyone's going to be the CEO. No, that's not how it works.
No, not at all. Speaking of CEOs, I feel like that type of stuff sets you up. I think more and more people are entrepreneurial.
Yep.
And that type of stuff, like those challenges that because you're doing that to yourself. I used to say, like, why would people pay $125 to run 26.2 miles?
Well, and then Ironman is like $700. Like we have Ironman in the community. It's coming up. That's why it's on top of my mind. But like, I think the same thing. I'm like, you paid how much to jump in the lake and swim 2 miles?
Yep.
And then I volunteer and paddleboard out there. Sometimes it's really fun. And they come over to your board to hold on, and you're like, oh gosh. But then you bike 17, and then you run a marathon at the end. I'm like, and you paid $700 for that?
700.
Jeez.
But that type of stuff really prepares you for success everywhere else. Because like you said, you look at all these little challenges and you're like, these are nothing.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah, I got this.
Yeah. Yeah. I climbed a cliff. Like, this is nothing for me.
Exactly.
Do you know your next big challenge? Do you have something on your radar that you're hoping to try?
I really wanted to get into the New York Marathon, but it's a lottery, and a few of my friends applied for it. None of us got in, so that was a little bummer. So I'll probably set my sights on something next spring, maybe a race or something. I haven't decided yet. We'll see. I just got married like a little over a year ago, so transitioning into a whole different like lifestyle. Like I said, my husband and I one of my biggest things has been learning how to become a better skier. So I got really into skiing this year. We skied all over Utah, California, the best snow of all time. I don't know. That snow was insane. 900 inches, just record breaking.
Utah or California?
Both of them.
Yeah.
So we went to Tahoe, was insane. And then we were in Utah and did, I think 5 or 6 resorts close to Salt Lake that were just, it was amazing. And we drove
which one was your favorite in Utah?
Ooh, Snowbird was really, really cool. I love that mountain. It was wonderful. And they had one side that was closed off for like almost a week because of avalanche and all this stuff. Well, we got off the lift and it's called Strawberry Fields, I think, and they opened it up as we're skiing through, and it was like a bunch of little kids screaming and skiing across this whole like field. It was just a bunch of us. Like, it was the coolest. Everyone's excited. They're like screaming and yelling, and people going down as quick as they can to get to the top so we get as many fresh tracks as we can. But yeah, that was pretty memorable.
I like those runs at Snowbird. They're long. They're like decently long. Yeah. What about Brighton? Did you go to Brighton?
At Brighton?
I like Brighton a lot.
My cousin, her wife, she is like a big time snowboarder. So we went up there her before, and it's a cool little mountain. It's a lot of snowboarders, a lot of snowboarders.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of Big Sky just because that's where I learned how to ski. That's where I visited all the time when I lived in Montana. So that's always been one of my favorites.
Yeah, we haven't done Big Sky yet. We have an annual snowboarding trip. Well, he skis
twice. I've been skiing.
You live in Montana.
Yeah, we go down to Utah.
We grew up in Minnesota though, where there was like it was flat for the most part. There's bluffs and stuff. There wasn't a skiing hill.
Yeah, well, Big Sky, it's insane. When you get to become a really good skier, those triple black diamonds or whatever, they're just insane.
Yeah.
But Utah snow was incredible this year. I mean, it was a record-breaking year for a lot of their mountains.
Yeah, it was crazy. Have you been to Park City?
Yeah, so we went to Park City. We met up with my husband's family down there. We did Solitude for a week. And then we also did Tahoe. And we actually got snowed in at one point, and they closed the mountain down because there was too much snow to even run the lift.
Crazy.
Yeah. So we're just like, well, I guess we'll just wait till the mountain opens up. And so we got fresh tracks, and I got stuck in a snowbank. It was awesome.
Jeez.
Go ahead.
I
was gonna say that, like, the whole outdoor thing, right? It might start with a run, right? Or like 2 runs or 3 runs, but then you meet people that do other things like snowboard and ski, and it kind of like opens up your aperture for what life could look like instead of just being in front of a computer or the TV. And that's what I love about the outdoors, because you can start doing one thing, but inherently the outdoors makes you break your comfort zones. And so you're like, well, if I'm gonna be outside this comfort zone, then might as well try something new and different. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's how I got into rock climbing. When I met my husband, he was like, that he had like a group of people, and I was very intimidated by rock climbing. It was just never something I was drawn to. Yeah. It was just very intimidating. Exactly. You watch Free Solo, you watch all of these things, and you're like, this is insane. And you climb the side of a rock, and if you fall, you'll get caught by your rope, but then you also might hit your head on the way down. Like, it's just insane. But then the community of rock climbers are pretty rad. And so then I was like, oh, it's another community. And then when you're not climbing, you're sitting in a hammock, chilling with your buddies, listening to music. And so I liked that a lot more. And so like that led to, other things.
How did van life come to be? And tell us about that setup. I want to hear
COVID. That's how it happened. We were like, when I met my husband, we both talked about the dream of like having a van and like traveling and seeing the world and doing all these things. And then COVID happened, and he was on and he found it, and he was like, found the van. It's in Jackson Hole. I'm flying there and gonna get it. And so, because the guy listed it on not a good site. He listed it like on like a limousine site instead of like on a van life site. Really? So we got it for the fraction of what it should have went for.
Crazy.
And so he's been building most of it. So I give him all the props. He is an engineer and he's the mastermind behind all of that. And then we just put a bed in it and started traveling, and keep adding more stuff to it. And now we've been all across the country in the van, and 2 Traveling Hippies on Instagram. So if you want to go over, check that out.
Traveling Hippies on it. I'm going to look that up right now.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun. We try to keep it. Yeah, we keep it fun. And we just got back from Glacier and we did all of our skiing adventures, and we did a cross country trip down to visit his family in South Alabama. So
What's been like the most like idyllic morning that you like open that door and just
oh yeah, check out that Instagram, you'll enjoy it. It's
okay.
actually Jackson Hole or outside of Telluride, Colorado was like opening up, water running by, hot cup of coffee, and it's just like, this is my front porch this morning.
I'm living in a Pinterest post.
Exactly. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what like, but it's also not fun too, because some days you are sleeping at a truck stop.
That's not idyllic.
The underbelly of van life.
The underbelly of van
I'm gonna
life.
tell you what, there's days you're just like, oh, I'm gonna have to sleep here tonight, or you have to be super stealth and you have to like be in a city and you have to like go find the restroom, take care of all that stuff, and then like park somewhere and just like, and then get up and hopefully, you know, cops don't knock on the door.
Do you have a go-to spot that you're like, okay, we're passing one of these, we have to stop and shower?
Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot. Like, and then I used to have a membership to Anytime Fitness just to have that, just for a shower. That was
Makes
kind of
sense.
like one of our summers. I had that just for a shower spot because they're everywhere.
Not for gym, for the shower.
For the shower.
I'm not a big fan of
I have a
gym.
shower
Sorry.
membership.
Sorry, Anytime, not my favorite gym, but showers.
Your favorite showers, but not the favorite gym.
Actually, in Moab, we found a trailer park, not a trailer park, but like an RV park that had like a great shower, washer, and dryer, and you just paid like a little bit to go like use their, and it was right outside of Moab. So we left Moab and started heading to Colorado. And so it was like the perfect place to shower, get all of our laundry done, kind of stretch out a little bit, get everything cleaned up before we hit the road again.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
And I recommend it to everybody. They're like, oh, I'm thinking. I'm like, don't think, do it. You won't regret it.
Just do it.
Yeah, even if it's you're going to buy a build and it costs way too, I think it's ridiculous on what people pay for it. But if you're willing to live pretty simple, that's what we did. We just keep adding it. Now we have an actual like stove, oven. I mean, I can make really good breakfast, like, you know, in the van. So
You're not in the van right now.
no, we're home.
Oh.
You do have a.
That would have been so cool.
Well, actually, I'm in the van right now. I could have. I mean, kind of clean and ready to go. I just got back from Glacier, but yeah,
That's awesome.
I have done some interviews in the van too.
There you go. Cool. That's so cool.
Well, I want to just thank you. I mean, you're awesome. I love your energy. I love the work you're doing.
Yeah.
What kind of lasting words would you leave with us, leave with our audience? It could be about anything. It could be about running or anything we've talked about.
Ooh, what's wisdom?
This means wisdom, by the way. For those watching. For
those
listening, she put her hands together like a wise.
I got very thoughtful in my head. I guess, you know, say yes as much as possible. Like I said, we went through COVID, and that was one thing. My husband and my boyfriend at the time bought that van. You know, not having live music is another one of our big things, and not having, you know, live music now, it's like, yes, there's a festival, there's this, it's a yes. So I think taking those opportunities and saying yes, and if the rock climbing scares you, if the skiing scares you, I think just give it a chance, because you might actually love it and get outside and, you know, do something great. Last thing, you pack it in, pack it out.
Yes.
I was just in Glacier. I'm like, clean up your mess, kids.
Yep, exactly. We believe in that.
Research where you're going. I'm hearing all these stories of tourists in Yellowstone.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. It is helpful. There's my husband and I will just show up and just see what happens. But
you kind of get it though.
Yes.
You understand how things work.
Yes, but yes, research will help your trip go a lot smoother, especially if there's like, you need to like get a reserve, like a trolley through Zion. Like I didn't know that when I pulled up in Zion. We're like, let's just drive around Zion. Oh, you can't drive around Zion. You have to get on the shuttle and go through. And I was like, oh, that would have been a good thing to research.
Yeah, that's so true.
I love the advice though. Just say yes. How has that changed your life? How long have you been doing that? How has that changed your life?
Oh, I think so in my it was one thing I did when my early 20s, when I moved back to Idaho from Montana, and I needed to like create a community and network myself and really kind of build a name for myself in the community. It was saying yes, whether it was a volunteer opportunity, whether it was a networking group, whatever it was. Now I don't have to do that as much because I have built my reputation or who I am in the community, because I did so much hard work of saying yes volunteering, being part of all the groups, you know, being part of this women's group, being part of this chamber. Now it's a little different. I don't have to say yes as much because I took so much time to do all those things.
Sounds like you just live the yes now.
Yeah, live the yes. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Live the
Yep.
yes.
There you go.
Mhm.
Little,
And
That's all yours.
little nugget for you. It's all yours.
I'm not writing that one down after this.
There you go. Thank you so much for coming and
Thank you,
being
guys.
on and getting vulnerable in some of those times. And yeah, we appreciate that.